Let me try that again. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. There's a lot in this week's Torah portion. Red cows and talking donkeys, travels and military battles, the passing of Moses' siblings, Aaron and Miriam. There's prophets, there's blessings, and more. When Aaron dies, there's 30 days of grieving. When Miriam dies, there's none of that, only a concern about water. It makes sense to ask, what's going on here? We can definitely discuss the feminist critique, which is quite valid. At the same time, our rabbis have a story that Miriam was blessed with a miraculous well throughout the Israelites' time in the desert. When Miriam passes away, the well goes away. Not surprisingly, the people panic. This leads to Moses striking the rock instead of speaking to the rock as God had instructed. As a result, Moses won't enter into the land. I want to focus on the people, however. It's true that at times the Torah has the people complaining about trivial matters. In this case, however, lots of people in the desert with no water. It's not a great combination. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah teaches, Im ein kemach ein Torah. If there is no flour or sustenance, there is no Torah. Meaning that we can't do anything if we don't take care of our basic needs. I've been thinking a lot about this, since there are far too many people in this country that do not have their basic needs met. According to government data, as of a couple years ago, there are 140 million poor and low-income people. 140 million poor and low-income people in these United States. The numbers are hard to imagine, but these are real people who are struggling every day. Ariana from Flint, Michigan, explained that her children have never had the experience of drinking water from the tap. 6 years and counting, this has not been fixed yet. Lakin Dillingham, a person from Knox County, Kentucky. Lakin shared the story of how her mom was shamed for using SNAP, for using the government program that's supposed to help. She talked about sitting in McDonald's parking lots for hours just to use the Wi-Fi so that she could finish her homework. There's little Jada Ricard, a 10-year-old girl from Boston. She spoke about how there are 3 methadone clinics less than a mile away from her home, and how scary it is to see people walking up and down the streets looking like zombies. There wasn't a way for her family to leave that situation. And Mary Jane Shanklin. Mary Jane is an RN and a wife of a Kansas farmer. And she was angry that there's only one grocery store and no hospitals in her county. She said that farmers live in an invisible poverty and a silent desperation as foreclosures loom, and the blame for being the one who lost the family farm hangs over them every single day. These stories are so tragic and so difficult, and life has only gotten more difficult since the pandemic broke out. Dwayne Thwaites, who works concessions at the Marlins ballpark in Miami, experienced what far too many people have had to experience. He waited over 6 weeks to get a response from the unemployment office. Any response at all. And 8 weeks before he received an unemployment check. This is during a time when approximately 40% of adults in this country, 40%, cannot afford a $400 emergency. These accounts were collected by the Poor People's Campaign, a campaign that argues that the status quo is not acceptable and moral revival is necessary to save the heart and soul of our democracy. 140 million people worried about basic necessities, from food and water and healthcare and safety in their neighborhood. The pandemic has only made things worse and given people more to worry about. I guess it's not a surprise that as we celebrate our 4th of July weekend, that in a Pew survey released this week, 71% of Americans are angry about the state of the country right now. 66% are fearful. In a country that, when I think of America, I think about patriotism and pride. In this survey, only 17% are feeling proud of our nation. Making reference to that survey, New York Times columnist David Brooks laments in his most recent piece, a lot of people look around at the conditions of this country, how Black Americans are treated, how communities are collapsing, how Washington doesn't work, and none of it makes sense. None of it inspires faith, confidence. He writes, if you don't breathe the spirit of the nation, if you don't have a fierce sense of belonging to each other, you're not going to sacrifice for the common good. Our friend down the street, Reverend Mike Dawson at First UMC Colleyville, he shared with me this week how things felt different during World War II, not because he lived through it. I guess it's his hobby to listen to old radio shows. I mean, I like fantasy and sci-fi novels, to each their own. He was telling me about these old broadcasts where everyone was pitching in. Everyone was contributing. And that was the message that was broadcast over and over and over again. What was the overarching theme? We are all in this together. That's what we're missing. That's what we're missing in this country. And for me, that is what this 4th of July needs to be about. There's been a lot of publicity about Frederick Douglass's address on July 5th, 1852, where he asked, what to the American slave is your 4th of July? His response was scathing, and deservedly so. Slaves had no stake in America. Today, we would all like to live in an America where it is indeed self-evident that all people are created equal, where all Americans have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We have seen, we are experiencing right now what life is like when we're fractured. And it doesn't work. Our country needs to feel that sense that we are all in this together. We can't just feel that way. We need to act like it. Our citizens, our leadership, all of us. In the 15th century, Spanish commentator Donna Bravina taught that giving tzedakah requires empathy. Why? Because we need to see people who are poor as our own loved ones and understand that when we care for them, we strengthen our community as a whole. That means when 140 million Americans or more are worried about meeting their basic needs, that cannot just be their problem. It has to be our collective problem. That is the moral revival that is necessary in order to save the heart and soul of our democracy. We have to be able to see ourselves as if all of these issues, from race to the pandemic, to these terrible economic struggles that so many people are experiencing, we have to see ourselves as if we're all in this together. If we can regain that sense of connection with all Americans, even when we disagree, then I think that we've got a chance. And that would be a good way, the most positive way of moving forward. We need to give ourselves that chance. Shabbat Shalom.